Hello, my name is Mark Weaver. Welcome to the Shepherd Community Center mini seminar on plan giving. I'm going to talk about the why, the what, and the how of plan giving. But let me open with prayer. Lord, you have created us for a purpose, and it's more than just about me. Show us today that the things that you're leading us to do, put in our heart, and then move us to know exactly what it is to do next with the things that you've entrusted us with, our time and our talent and our treasure. We do trust you in this and leading us since we are your children. Amen. So again, name's Mark Weaver. Been invited by Shepherd Community Center to do, as I say, mini seminar on plan giving, but I like to start out with the why. Simon Sinek did a TED Talk, one of the highest viewed TED Talks, enabled Start with the Why. In other words, people don't really care what and how you do what you do until they know why you do what you do. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of my why, and then I'm going to ask you about your why. So my why, I left pharmacy and started a business in 1983. It was a financial planning business. And over the next 35 years, that financial planning business grew to where we were actually specializing in charitable planning, estate giving, what I actually now call transformational generosity. We managed about $500 million in assets, had I think 5 different offices. So that is where we ended up. And I sold that practice 3 years ago. But that's not where it started. When I started started this business, this practice, I had one goal, and that was to make absolutely as much money as I could, or to be known, or to be famous, or to be well thought of. That was my goal. And 12 years into it, I had been pretty successful since that was my goal. I was receiving an award, going to San Diego, California to receive it, but this award was one in which less than 100 people in the 125-year history of the company, out of 125,000 advisors, had received that. And I was actually the second youngest one to do that. And one of the issues that I had, though, was I wasn't feeling it. I was having trouble. People were contacting me and congratulating me. Saying, hey, man, my peers were saying, you've done great. You're great. You're great. And I wasn't feeling it. And there's something in my soul, that's the best way to put it, wasn't right. Because, yeah, I'll talk about the wall in a second, but we're on the plane going to go receive this award. My wife, Cindy, my older son, Jesse, was 15, and my younger son, Warren, who was 10 at the time, were on the plane. Jesse has his ball cap on, which was a permanent fixture for a 15-year-old, takes it off and goes, Mom, what's this here in my forehead? And he had a place about that size of your little finger. It was a bump on his forehead. Well, Mom goes hysterical. She's, oh my gosh, this is awful. No matter, and I'm back there thinking, it's okay. It's okay. So I've since learned that oftentimes denial masquerades as faith. So go get the award, walk the stage, still not feeling it. Actually, I'm probably feeling worse by this time than I was, because on the way back to 9 days later, back home, that place had grown about that big, the end of your thumb on the side of his forehead. And as it turns out, it was a brain tumor. It's hard to talk about even today, even though it's been 25, 26 years ago. The good news was that we could see it, because it was actually growing in as well as out. So but had we not caught it, had it not been going out, there could have been more permanent damage. The other good news is that he now has a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old daughters, who are now granddaughters of mine. So that ended well. But even after the surgery, it was successful, and they saw that it was a benign tumor. All those things were good news. But I was more than a mess. I was totally racked up. going into work just, why am I here? What is this about? What are you calling me to? None of this makes any sense. There's got to be more than making money. I had climbed that ladder, I put that ladder against the wall, and I realized when I got up to the top of that, wrong wall. Wrong wall. Well, that very week, I'm back in the office, and I had that client that comes in that you always see coming in. I don't want to normally see him, and this time I really didn't want to see him. And he comes in, he starts ranting and raging about the fact that he only made 17%. He should have made 23 like the markets did, and going on and on and on. And I'm thinking, what does that have to do with life? What's that got to do with anything? Because, see, I'm still grieving. I'm still like a snow globe that's been shook up and everything's still in disarray, waiting for things to settle, where God's getting ready to settle it for me in a good way. And so he leaves, and I'm thinking, if you make more money, it's just going to wreck your family. And unfortunately, that is literally what happened. And then I'm thinking, it's not about how do I make more money? How do I make what I have matter more, right? It's not about just making more. It's how do I make what I have matter more to my family and those people, causes, and missions that I'm a part of. And so I searched. I said, God, what is it? What would you have me do? It's not my life. It's your life. I've been acting like I'm in control, which is still a joke. But what would you have me do? And I realized that generosity is part of what he had implanted on me. I truly believe that we serve a generous God, that my life is not my own. I've been bought by the price of another. And so I think, well, but we can only give so much away. It's not the interest, not me just making more. He says, show others. Wow. Show others. Let's magnify how the impact that you make by showing others how to magnify the impact that they can make. Again, to both their families and to others. And so then I started out doing this. And over that period of time, we help arrange over $100 million of, it's still overwhelming, of gifts that are going to nonprofits that our clients love, to go ahead and start continuing to sustain those. So with that I will ask you, why do you give your time and your talent and your treasure to Shepherd Community Center? That's question one. The next question is what is your dream for Shepherd Community Center? If you were to walk into Shepherd Community Center in 25 years, and it's greater than it is today, can you describe what you would see, what you would feel, or what you would experience? And for some of you, you are dreamers, and you can say, whoa, I would like to walk into something like Shepherd Community Center in the north of Indy, or in Muncie, or in LA. I don't know what your dreams are. But if you were to walk into it in 25 years, what does that experience, describe what that experience feels like, looks like? What do you sense when you do that? And then, how do you sustain that why? Which is a lot of what this is about, is how do you sustain something that God's called you to be a part of while you're living? And let me go ahead and introduce the life prints thing. Again, life prints are those things that are like fingerprints. You know where someone's been by their fingerprints. Well, your life prints are the same things. What are the things that your life prints are on? Like Shepherd. Or what are the things that their life prints are on you? So those are some of those things that you think about when you go forward. What are the life prints that need to be sustained when I'm no longer here? And then I will ask you, whether you do it by email, telephone call, or whatever, go ahead and share your why and what is your dream for Shepherd Community Center in the future. So that's a great place to to jump off there. So let's do this. So I talked about the why and what is plan giving? Plan giving is just planning to how do I give away the things that I cannot keep. So I'm sitting in my home one day. It's 100 years old at this point in time. First family's lived in it, but I'm sitting there thinking, other people have lived here. They're not here. Someday I'm not going to be here, or somebody else will be living here. But it led me to the things that, I'm not taking this place with me. I'm actually not taking my investments with me. I'm not taking anything with me to heaven, but me, my soul. That's what I'm taking. So how do you plan to give away those things that you're not taking with you? I mean, we're crustaceans at the best. These homes and these things that we have, they're not even ours. We're just passing through. But we are entrusted with them. We're not just entrusted with them here, we're entrusted to what are we going to do with them later? How do we magnify a gift? How do we magnify a gift? So that's plan giving. And you can do, and some of the plan gifts that I will talk about, they actually make an impact for you and your family now, as well as later. Notice I said to you and your family, even financial impacts in a positive way now and later. And help organizations like Shepherd. So let me start with some of the how. The low-hanging fruit. A bequest and a will. Well, a lot of people say, well, that's kind of duh. That sounds pretty easy. Well, about half of the people, just statistically, that are watching this don't have a will. So if you have a will, you can either rewrite it or do a codicil to it to include Shepherd Community Center in it. It really is that simple. If you don't have a will, get a will, make a will, because nobody dies dead even. You're going to leave something behind. So make a will, and you can include Shepherd in it, as well as your children, whomever you want to. But that's it. That's pretty low-hanging fruit. The other thing is our things like beneficiaries and IRAs or 401ks or 403b plans, any type of qualified plan. Your children or your heirs or persons that receive that are going to have to pay taxes on it. Somebody will pay tax on it sooner or later, I promise. But when you leave it to a nonprofit like Shepherd, there aren't any taxes. So Shepherd's a tax-exempt organization, so they don't pay taxes on a gift like that. Most often when I was working with clients in this particular capacity, I would say, hey, the first asset you want to give to the nonprofit is going to be the ones that your children normally would pay tax on. You give them the things that have already had tax paid on or there's no tax paid on. Ross and stocks and houses and real estate go tax-free capital gains wise, but the IRAs don't. So if you've got a choice of which one you're going to give to whom, it's an easy decision to make. Another thing are life insurance changes. I don't know how many times I've been working with somebody, they're 70 years old. They've got a life insurance policy that their mom and dad took out on when they were kids. And this life insurance policy now has a $25,000, $30,000, $35,000, $40,000 death benefit on it. And mom and dad are still the beneficiaries. They've just forgotten about it. You can change a beneficiary on a life insurance. Whether you change a beneficiary on an IRA, qualified plan, or a life insurance, it's a phone call or it's getting online. Send me a form to change these. Always talk to your CPA about any of these types of changes, especially the ones that deal with qualified plans. So some of the things that I know are benefits to you for giving is plan giving can reduce your current income taxes. It can actually allow you to avoid capital gains in many cases and increase tax deductions. So there are some things that can come back to you. I've also had some people that were looking at retirement, and there are certain types of tools that allow you to accumulate money to give away at a later date, while you're in the higher tax brackets, get the tax deduction and give the money out of that in a future at a lower or zero tax bracket. Also, some plan giving can allow you, and I'll use some examples of this, actually can increase your cash flow while you're living. Yeah, give you tax breaks and increase your tax flow. And the other thing is I was talking to a gentleman at Shepherd who has volunteered there. he says, I get the gratification of doing it. So I want to do something that helps build and sustain Shepherd, because if I'm giving my time, talent, treasure to him now, why wouldn't I want to see it continue in the future? So you get that benefit of helping to build and sustain Shepherd. There's several different income tax savings that I've really already gone over, and there's some of those, these are in the slides. There can be estate tax savings. Admittedly, right now, the estate tax exemptions are very high. That doesn't include a lot of people, but there are some great plan giving techniques that that you can use, not only continue to get tax deductions, but increase the wealth that you leave for your family. I'll use an example in a sense of this. It's not just an estate tax avoidance, but it is something that can magnify the estate. You can always, the other nice thing about some of these gifts, especially when they're done ahead of time, is they protect against what I call creditors and predators. So some of these gifts you can do that are irrevocable or irrevocable, depending on where you're from, that protect them, that gift from creditors and predators, and you know that it's going to shepherd or the nonprofit that you choose. So I'm going to give you a very real example. It's a very, well, I'll say it's a recent example because the client has recently passed away. This was done in 1999. I'm going to tell you what we did, then I'm going to show it and probably explain it again, but there is an example of this in the slides that you have along with this particular seminar. She had $215,000 in some appreciated stock. We ended up putting that in what's called a charitable trust. She got a tax deduction for putting it in. Once it's in the charitable trust, she was able to sell it and not recognize capital gains. And then she received an income over her lifetime and until she passed away. And then what was left in that went to actually a couple local churches. And so tax deduction to start with for the gift in, lifetime income, was able to sell the asset, increase her income, and not pay capital gains on that, and received a lifetime amount of income from it. So let me show you some of the math behind this. So there's charitable remainder unit trust. Charitable meaning that it's set up like a 501c3. It says there's no taxes on anything that's in this, that goes in this. It's a remainder trust, which means that whatever remains in the trust at the end of this person's life goes to the nonprofit or goes to the charity. It's a unit trust, which means that in this case, she set up a 9% payout, which means that she received 9% of what was put in. 9% of what was put in, and whatever that balance was annually. So if the balance went up, she received more payout. If the balance went down, she received less payout. But it was 9% over that period of time. Over that, from 99 till recently, she received roughly $450,000 in income. She received a tax deduction when the money went in, even though not on the full amount because she retained the right to the income. But she received an income tax break, and the actual tax savings were about $40,000, state and federal. So you see this money back. So in a way, it reduces her actual investment to about $175,000 because the 40's back here. This lady was a tither. So not only was she tithing off the tax savings, she would be tithing off of this $450,000 every year. Passed away, when she passed away recently, $290,000 went to the nonprofits. So let's look at this. First thing that she received was a tax deduction, which means income back into her pocket. She received the right to the income over her lifetime, $450,000 to her. So she still maintained her own security of the investment, but received a tax break and when she passed away, the $290,000 goes to, actually in this case, 2 churches. So that's how you can benefit by doing plain giving. I mean, she benefited during her lifetime for doing plain giving. Let me give you another case study. Again, these are real people. This couple was they were late 60s. She was late 60s. He was early 70s when I first started working with them. They were school teachers. They had both grown up impoverished. He really was. He would tell the story that well, his dad died when he was 5 years old, and they lived in the Appalachian Mountains, and so there were like 8 other kids in the family. So he was raised by a mom when he was 5 years old. He was the youngest of all the children, and so there was no money. He ended up going to a college that you can only go to if you don't have money. And always told me the story. He'd cry every time he saw it. We would all cry when we'd hear him tell the story of that. His first month in school, he got a letter from his mom, how proud she was, and there was $1 in there. And she said, "That's all I have, but all I have, you can have." So I still can't how to tell the story. And so here are 2 that had a passion not to give back, but to pay forward the life prints that have been put on them and their life prints. So they had never made more than $50,000 while they were working as school teachers. But by the time I'd met them and their money had accumulated and their pensions had grown, they were receiving about $100,000 a year. Super frugal, weren't spending that because they were giving $40,000 away every year to their church and other nonprofits, backpack programs for people to help lift them out of poverty. Just their financial situation at that time, they had about $500,000 roughly in appreciated stock. They had $750,000, and actually there were IRAs at that time, originally 403B plans, but they're IRAs. And maybe between their house and boats and tools and just stuff and some other accounts, maybe another $250,000, $250,000. So they were worth about $1.5 million. Never made more than $50,000, but just were super frugal. Had some goals. One was to maximize the amount of funds, put the most funds, as they said they want to put the most to work. They want to magnify what they had while they were living and after they passed away. So again, their goals were now and later. The other thing is they wanted to reduce their income taxes. He despised paying income taxes. He almost enjoyed not paying taxes as much as he would have given money away, we're close first and second there. So some of the strategies that we did. The first thing that we did was we took half, $250,000 of his appreciated securities and put them into a donor advised fund. We're going to call it DAF for short, donor advised fund. So we put the $250,000 in there. But since this is actually, the donor advised fund is set up as a 501c3, they had the ability to determine annually, anytime during the year, at their death, who gets this money. But they received a tax deduction, which ended up being about $50,000, a tax deduction for the gift in there. Once it was in there, then it was sold. So they didn't recognize any capital gains. So they actually probably saved over another $50,000 in not having to pay capital gains on this money to start with. So not only did they not have to pay capital gains, but they got a tax deduction on $200,000 of this that had never had tax paid on it. Think about that. They received a tax deduction on money they never paid tax on. That's like me getting a tax deduction on your money. So they put this in here, and there's something else. He and I were talking one day. He says, I want to make this, I want to give more away. Well, what are you talking about? Well, we're giving $40,000 a year away. I want to give more away when I pass away. So inside this donor advised fund, We bought $1 million life insurance policy. Guess what else happened with that? Well, had a premium every year, had to pay on it. Well, they gifted the money into the donor advised fund. They got a tax deduction for putting the money in there for the premium, and the premium paid the $1 million, the life insurance policy. So let's fast forward. We had some other techniques with this. One thing is that the tax savings that he received, he didn't pay taxes for 5 years. Oh my gosh. He was elated. He kept thinking, oh my gosh, is this legal? Is this legal? Yes, it's legal. So he didn't pay taxes for 5 years. And guess what they do? They get more money away. Says, well, we've got more money to give away. We've got our pensions. We don't have to worry. We've got plenty more than we'll ever use over our lifetime. So they started giving more money away. The other thing that happened, though, is this is amazing, is when they passed away, which was about 6 or 7, 8 years ago. Time goes by fast. That $1,500,000 estate ended up being worth over $2.5 million because the life insurance policy magnified it. And from the first year after they passed away, it paid out over $100,000 in benefits to those places that had been life prints on them, and their life prints have been on. And today it's probably paying out about $125,000. It's paying out about 3 times what it was they were giving while they were living. That's the power of plan giving. So one case where not only did it enhance the person's current financial, actually both cases, their current financial position, but it magnified the kingdom purposes that they were about. I think it would be one of those well done, good and faithful servants. So as we get to this point, so what do you do now, right? What's your next? What I've found is every plan gift starts with a conversation. Have a talk with Colton. If you have attorneys, CPAs, financial advisors who get this, you can have a conversation with them. But whatever you do, bring them into the conversation with Colton. If you've already done a planned gift, let Shepherd know. Because here's what happens with that, is when we know about a planned gift, it encourages others. It encourages others to say, hey, wait, how do I make the most of the things that matter the most, both for my family and for others that I'm called to serve? And also with this, I highly encourage you, if you have children or if you're giving and you have parents, bring your family in on this conversation. Bring your family in on this conversation, because that's really when it becomes transformational. That's when it starts transforming both the givers and the receivers. Because when you bring your family in and you start talking about what you're about and why you're about that and what you're looking at doing, and even bring them along and helping them be a part of the conversation, then you might be beginning another generation or even a couple generations doing the very same thing that you're doing to make a difference in other generations. One of the gentlemen that I talked to recently that's a part of Shepherd, he gives his time, talent, and treasure. He said, it's not only do I get the gratification of seeing this, but what I'm seeing is transformational change in not just these children, but in future generations, their children. Well, guess what? God wants that for your children too. And this type of process starts that conversation about why we're about. God has designed our family for a purpose. Let's start getting them together, determine what that purpose is, and bring them along with making a transformational difference for generations to come. My name's Mark Weaver. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for being a part of Shepherd. Let Colton know if you have questions, and we have resources.